So, having said all that, let me tell you a little about this book, and I've been very pleased with the response to it. I've been pleased that's actually many authors pleased when a book does well, and it's done very well since it came out in October. So much so that we've got a revised paperback coming out in June. It's a little different version of it, so those of you who bought the paperback will have to buy the other one. Yeah, so you need to get both copies. Now, I'm not claiming that it's gone to #1 in Amazon, because I'm not a presidential press secretary who rats on his boss. I can't guarantee that a book will go to #1. You have to be a rat leaving a sinking ship for that to happen. I do think it's amazing that people get away with that. I knew Scott McClellan, and I'm going to be, I'm blunt, Dan. He is absolutely the worst presidential press secretary in my long association with presidential press secretaries. The worst. He was so inarticulate, I was embarrassed to have him representing a White House or the country. And then, how did he get the position? I asked many people, and they said, he's just so loyal to the Bushes. Well, so much for loyalty. When you see the opportunity to make a buck, some people will go for it. Now he sees all the terrible things they were doing. He was blind to it, and the White House had no clue what that piano player was doing in the foyer there. It's really quite amazing. But that's America, and you're entitled to make a buck any way that you can, and he's a classic example of somebody who has made it any way he could. So anyway, it's not that kind of book, thank goodness. It's, I hope, a more serious book. It's less about current politics. During the Q&A session, if you want to ask questions about current politics, I'm happy to do it. I understand there's a campaign going on. Some people, oh, there are the McCluskeys, how are you? Here, Joe and Clifton. I've got to stop this. The whole time we'll be taken up saying hello to old friends in here. And I'm sorry Clifton's here, because he disagrees with half the things in his book. I'm not calling him Clifton. Now, we had another session, and I made that mistake. And I'm just, keep your hand down. I'm not calling him. But what Clifton doesn't know is that this book, which proposes 23 ways to change the Constitution, and to correct what I believe are some inherent flaws in the Constitution, which were not obvious in the beginning. When the Constitution was written, much of this made sense because we didn't have mass democracy, we didn't have political parties, we didn't have many of the governing principles that we revere today. They weren't accepted at the time. They weren't even thought of at the time. So of course it was a constitution written in that context by a group of men trying to keep a country together, a small country, 13 states, 2 million population just gathered on the East Coast, and now we're a continental country with worldwide responsibilities. We have a very different system. We expect everybody to be involved. We want everybody to be involved. Mass democracy is a fundamental. And so it's no surprise that some pieces of the Constitution no longer work very well. Our system doesn't work terribly well. That's my view, having watched it and worked in it and tried to work with it for all these decades. And so I've suggested things, and people have said, my God, that is outrageous, that is radical. Let me stress to you, the vast majority of the Constitution, including the basic structure and the separation of powers and the branches as they're designed more or less, and the entire Bill of Rights, remain untouched. Were there pieces of the Bill of Rights I would have enjoyed toying with? Yes, but I don't want to be shot. I tell this story frequently. It's absolutely true. Shortly after the book was published, I did Diane Rehm Show, which was one of my favorite NPR shows. And during the broadcast, a fellow named George from Southwest Virginia called up, and he claimed to be the closest living relative to James Madison. And he was furious about this book. And he made it clear that he had a large gun collection, and if necessary, he was going to use it against me, because he wanted that Constitution kept precisely the way James Madison had designed it, written it. Well, just a couple of days prior to that, I received a letter from the president of the James Madison Society of Descendants. And he praised the book and said he was he claimed to be the closest living to James Madison. I don't know how you determine these things. You need to get another commission to figure out who's the closest, but get some DNA analysis. We'll figure out who's closest. But in any event, he said, this is exactly what Mr. Madison would have wanted. I'm convinced that he would have wanted us to make sure the Constitution kept up with the times. So I read this letter to George, and George hung up. That's the last I've heard of George, and I'm still living. He hasn't shot me yet. And really, fundamentally, that was my motivation. My motivation was to make some of these changes. Though this is a book, I hope, for good citizens, but it's also a teaching book, and it really was designed in the classroom. I teach a large class, a 101 class every spring that Clifton first assigned to me many years ago. Got about 500 students in it. And it's tough to get them involved and active and interested, particularly in a large class. You've really got to reach them somehow or another. And I've learned that controversy helps. So I wanted this book to stir the pot and make people think. And sometimes people would embrace the changes and get very excited about them. And even this morning I got emails. I mean, the thing came out in October. I'm getting emails in May from people saying, oh, I loved this, oh, I hated this, you know, and on and on. But I wanted people to think. And sometimes, as I say, you get excited and happy about a change, and other times you get very angry and unhappy. But you think, as a consequence, you think about the Constitution. And maybe you read it for the first time in a long time, because most people haven't read the Constitution. They claim to be representing the Constitution. They claim to care about the Constitution, but they haven't even read the Constitution. They don't know what's in there. More Americans can name the 3 members of the 3 Stooges than can name the 3 branches. This is true. There was a survey done on what people know about the Constitution. They know almost nothing. So if you can create a Constitution and take this document and cause people to think it's not just a musty, dusty, old piece of parchment, that it's fundamental to how we live, and that, indeed, there are parts that may need some adjustment and change. And I was trying to get around to the point that out of the 23, there are 6 of them I don't support, but I don't tell you that in the book, nor will I tell you now. Students try to guess which 6. But I made the best possible case for these changes. Now, why did I pick them? Because we did a major public opinion survey, really good firm, large sample, unlike much of what you see in public opinion polls about politics. And there were quite a number of changes strongly supported by the public that I wasn't all that crazy about. Nonetheless, we live in a democracy. It was worth taking that point of view and trying to make the best of it. And I tried to do that anyway in the book. So if you read it, maybe you can try and guess which 6 I don't support. But I do support the other ones, and there are quite a few. And as I've tried to suggest, not all of them are major changes. I'll go through a few of them. But the first thing